Okay, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Lake Norman Chamber of Commerce's Focus Friday. And today's program features Natasha Marcus, Senator Marcus, and also Senator Vickie Sawyer. But today's event is sponsored by Novant Health. So to get everything started, I would like to bring up Luke McDonald for a few words.
Thank you. Morning.
Hey, good morning.
Morning, everyone. Want to say thanks to the Chamber for having us. We're happy to sponsor this event. I've been doing that for a while. Thank you to both the senators for your time. Just wanted to say a quick note from Novant. Make it known, our chief priority right now is our patients and our providers. We're doing everything we can to recruit and retain the resources we need to provide the access to care for our patients in the communities we serve. Workforce is one of the biggest challenges we're facing. So, one of the things we recently did, we announced effective March 3rd, we're increasing our living wage from $15 to $17 an hour. But workforce remains a challenge. So we're looking forward to working with the senators and our community partners on how we can address that. Another thing I wanted to mention is Medicaid expansion. I want to thank the NC House for expanding Medicaid so quickly. And we look forward to working with the senators in addressing Medicaid expansion and HASP. Again, just want to say thank you for the opportunity. Look forward to the discussion today.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Luke. And at this time, I'd like to introduce our Public Policy Chair, Jeff Tarte, to conduct the meeting.
All right, thanks, David. Yeah, I will. Good morning, everybody. A little wet out there in this Friday morning. We have the pleasure and honor of having the two North Carolina State Senators, Natasha Marcus and Vickie Sawyer, who represent the geographic footprint for the Lake Norman Chamber. It's been a busy start to the long session for both of you. A lot of issues on the table. And we're going to start this morning by giving the floor to each of the senators to give us an update on the things they've been doing and their perspective on what's been going on over the past few weeks, and particularly this week's been busy. And then I'm going to go through and follow up on a few issues and questions. And then if we have other questions from anybody, we'll try to field a few of those. We're going to try to keep it to a pretty hard stop around 9:30 if we end up going that long. So Senator Sawyer, since you're here, why don't we give you the floor first? And then I think Senator Marcus, you have also PowerPoint, and we're going to give you control of the screen here in a second.
Thank you, Senator Tarte.
It's good to see you.
Yeah, it's good to be. Yeah, it's good to be here. And thank you all for allowing us to be here, and especially to Senator Natasha Marcus and continued collaboration working with me. And I think she can attest to because the fact I did not return her email for 3 or 4 days is that we've been so busy lately, and especially being chair of transportation. I think probably arguably one of the top topics in this area, and especially in Iredell County and Cornelius, Huntersville, there's always frustration around transportation. That's why I worked so hard to become transportation chair. I don't know that was the wisest of choices, because now everybody thinks that I have this magic wand that I can fix every problem because I have this title, but in fact, it just makes it even more difficult. So as we move through today, really, I'm going to focus a lot of my comments about the transportation space, because it's something that's near and dear to my heart. Of course, we are working on different things in the Senate that will affect us all, especially Medicaid expansion. I do want to say we passed Medicaid expansion last year, probably not in the version of what other people would like, but I was happy to support that. We have some other initiatives that are pretty big moving forward, so we'll get into those in a little bit.
Great.
Thank you.
All right. Senator Marcus, we'll give you the floor, and we have the ability to give her control. Okay.
Can you hear me okay?
Senator Marcus, we need your audio.
My speaker is on. Can you not hear me? I'm speaking. I'm unmuted. I don't know. They can hear me on the Zoom, it says.
Yeah. And Senator, we're checking our side, see if it's us. You might also, one of the things is you're off mute on Zoom. Sometimes your PC, your laptop might be muted. or down, if you'll check, we'll make sure we got them all going correctly.
I'll raise the volume. I'm definitely not muted on the computer.
It's the rain. Blame everything on the rain.
You're on Zoom. Audio.
So they're just volume down.
All right, so
We
yeah.
think it's on our side.
Okay, I've raised the volume on my side. I don't know.
Nope, not yet. Nope, now we're up here. We're not muted.
My volume.
Tell me when you need me to speak to test it.
Can they hear them on Zoom?
They
Speaker.
can, they can hear
That's
them.
that's speaker.
You think we'd have this technology down by now, right?
Do you think we have it?
Can you hear me now?
Yes,
hear
we've
you.
got you.
Excellent.
Hey, all right. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, everyone, especially to my colleague, Senator Sawyer. Welcome to Mecklenburg County delegation. Maps have changed this year, so we welcome Senator Sawyer as representing part of Cornelius, one precinct in Huntersville. And so we'll be working literally side by side now as our districts are next to each other. I think that will be good for those areas that we represent together. I've always had a good working relationship with Senator Sawyer, and so I look forward to working on that. I do have a bone to pick with what was said at the beginning about who is it from Novant? I missed the name, but whoever's representing Novant said that the North Carolina House passed Medicaid so quickly. I thought, what? It's taken over a decade, but okay.
I meant just this session.
I would say finally has passed Medicaid, but yeah, once they brought it up, it passed quickly yesterday, but man, is it taken too long. So I'm glad to see some movement on that. Finally, I know I and several others have been pushing that for over a decade as a really common sense solution to a lot of the problems that we face in the healthcare space. So I'm glad to see some movement. I'm hopeful, although, I'll believe it when I see it. They've told us a few years in a row now, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. So we'll see. But I do think that will be a huge improvement for public health and for our economy and so many other reasons why we need to do that, rural hospitals, et cetera. So I'm excited about that. I do have, I don't know how people feel about PowerPoint. Some people roll their eyes and hate them. For me, it helps me remember what I want to tell y'all. So when it's my turn, I'll walk through all the things that I'm working on and look forward to the conversation ahead this morning.
All right, if you want to go ahead and go through your PowerPoints, Senator,
Oh.
that'd be great.
I thought Senator Sawyer was going to go first.
Oh, no, I'm fine to go ahead. I am obviously not a PowerPoint person, so.
Oh.
I go right ahead. I'd love to see what you got going.
I thought we were going to hear all about transportation stuff this morning.
Well,
All
she's
right,
bringing
well,
all the solutions. So
I don't know.
let me see if I can do this. All right. Well, I wasn't prepared, but here we go. Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yeah.
yes.
Excellent. Hopefully people on Zoom can also see the screen. So I will start going through this. So you tell me, Jeff, when we're getting to the point where you want me to stop.
You've got 15, 20 minutes each of you, and then that'll leave 15 minutes or so for questions if we need
Okay.
to.
Well, this is
Where's
just a
yours?
little bit about me. I'm not sure who's in the room since I'm not there in person, but not everyone knows me. So I'm Natasha Marcus. This is my third term in the North Carolina Senate. I'm serving at the Minority Leader's pleasure as the deputy leader for legal matters for our Senate Democratic Caucus. We have a lot of things that come up kind of outside of specific legislative work that we do in the courts that impact our work. Particularly related to redistricting and voting rights and those sorts of things. And I serve on that committee. So I'm using my law degree in that way. Before I was a state senator, I did a lot of community work and volunteered and then later worked at the Ada Jenkins Center in Davidson I think my experiences in those spaces really helped inform me to be a better senator, to know the needs of our community. And so I use my law degree, but also my life experiences in my job. I live in Davidson and have since 2007, and those are my two adorable daughters, both of whom are adults. My youngest is a teacher in her first year of teaching. And my oldest is a PhD student in Richmond at VCU. So that's a little bit about me personally. Facts about the district. Some people don't really focus on their state senators and how it works. So I know Jeff knows this, and Senator Sawyer knows this, but this is the map. We have, looks like someone's in the waiting room. Bill, can you let them in? I don't know if I can do it or not, but I'm getting a notice. So there are now, there used to be 5 Senate districts in Mecklenburg County, but because our population has grown so much, there are now 6, which is why we are now able to welcome Senator Sawyer. So she's 37 there, the pink on the map at the top. So Iredell County plus those sections of Mecklenburg County. And then I am Senate District 41, which is on this map, purple, I would call that maybe lavender. It starts the northernmost point in Davidson where I live, and it goes all the way down to the airport area, West Boulevard and the airport. So it's a pretty spread out district. Mountain Island Lake is in there. Most of Huntersville, all except one precinct, the east side of Charlotte, and then west and northwest Charlotte is, I'm sorry, the east side of Cornelius, that's what I meant to say. And then the north and northwest side of Charlotte, there's about 225,000 people in the district. There are 50 senators total. Some people don't know that. So I am one of 50. And the district lines have changed every 2 years since at least 2018, and they're likely to change again in 2024. We may have time to talk about that, and I have a slide about that later if people are interested in district line changes with the constant redistricting that happens in our state. We are notorious for continuing to change district lines. These are the committees that I have been assigned to. I don't necessarily get to choose my committees. President Pro Tem Phil Berger assigns our committees, but this year they line up pretty well with what I would have liked to be on. Judiciary, I've been on that before. Redistricting and elections, an issue that matters a lot to me. I've served on that one before. I'm proud to have been added to the education, which we call in the Senate, the education and higher education. We have only one committee that deals with all education matters. So I'm happy to be added to that. It's an issue that matters a lot to me. And then some other appropriations, commerce and insurance, which has not met yet this session. So I'm looking forward to that. This is a quick overview of my policy priorities going into this new session. They line up pretty much with what they have been since I was elected. Supporting our public schools is always right near the top for me. I think that if we don't have a strong public education framework, that we really can't build on top of that the other things that we want: a strong economy, a labor force, educated electorate, all the other things that I think really help our state and are so important. I've been frustrated with what I see as continuing underfunding of education, and will continue to push for improvements there. Equal rights for everyone, including women. I am, as you know, a woman. I have 2 daughters I just introduced you to. So their rights matter. The rights of all women in our state are even more so since the Dobbs decision, I think, under attack, and it's frustrating to me. So I'm going to always speak up for that. The LGBTQ community, again, being targeted. I want our state to be a welcoming state for all. Defending democracy. There's so many ways in which I worry about the state of our democracy. It's really important to me that we end gerrymandering, that we protect voting rights for every eligible voter, that we maintain a separation of powers. We're supposed to have 3 separately operating branches of government: executive, judicial, and legislative. It seems to me there's continued power grabs by the legislature to break into both of those, undermining governor's power, to closeness with the North Carolina Supreme Court that worries me, among other things. Affordable and accessible healthcare. I talked a little bit about the number one thing there is expanding Medicaid. which I hope we're going to do again this year. It's well overdue. But there are other issues there. Environmental protections, renewable energy solutions. It's so important to me that we hurry up and move in the direction of green energy, renewable energy. I'm a proponent of offshore wind, solar. We need to talk about nuclear. I know it's a controversial one, but I think that has to be part of our clean energy solutions. And then environmental protection. So we've dealt with, since I've been in office, the coal ash issue, which I saw as a very important issue to resolve, with it leaching into the groundwater in unlined pits was very worrisome to me. So I'm glad we're going to get those cleaned up. And then, of course, the giant gasoline spill in Huntersville, which is the largest in the history of the United States. And it happened right here in my district in Huntersville. Reducing gun violence and the need for common sense reform in that area. We can talk more about that. We just had a big fight yesterday in which I was a vocal opponent of a gun law that I think is going to make us less safe. I'm going to continue to hope that we can work on a bipartisan basis for some common sense reforms that I think are very popular in North Carolina, but for some reason we're doing the opposite in the General Assembly these days. Improved transportation options. I've always been frustrated with the fact that we got the only private owned toll road in the entire state as our only solution for the overcrowding on I-77. I'll let Senator Sawyer talk more about that. I know we have similar feelings about that, since she's the transportation chair in the Senate. I'll let her address those more. And then I always am advocating for the district, lots of local priorities that town boards will bring to me, individuals will bring to me. And again, I represent 3 towns plus part of the city of Charlotte. These are survey results from a constituent survey that I conducted over about a month and a half going into this new session to ask people of all parties, tell me what you want me to work on. And I guess I would say I was not surprised that these are the priorities that they told me, all the ones at the top there. There's others, of course, we can't put them all on the chart, but this is what folks told me they want me to work on. So I'm going to continue to do that. To the extent we're going to talk about transportation, I thought this was interesting. The one question I asked on the survey was, do you support the Charlotte Moves Task Force Transportation Plan and the proposed 1-cent sales tax to support it? That's the plan that currently does not commit to the red line or any other real good solution for the North Mecklenburg area. So I am aligning with the mayors of the North Carolina or of the North Mech area here, telling me that as it is, we don't support it because it doesn't do enough for our area. But I'm waiting to see. I'm hoping we can work with Norfolk Southern to get a better solution there. So surprised to see almost, right about a whole 50% of the folks who responded said they support it as is. But then almost as many people saying either no or undecided, just don't know enough about the plan yet. So we'll see where that goes. I know Mayor Vi Lyles and the city, Charlotte City Council are pushing hard for that 1-cent sales tax. So we'll see. Here's a little more detail on kind of each of these issues and what I mean. I touched on some of this. I'm on elections and voting. I'm working on a bill called the Fix Our Democracy bill. I think there's a lot of things that we could do better that I hope we can get some bipartisan support for. Ending gerrymandering. I'd love to institute a situation in which legislators are not drawing their own districts so that we can't use the way we draw district lines to benefit one political party. I know Democrats gerrymandered the state before I ever was in the General Assembly. So I'm not excusing that behavior, but I do think we can't just keep saying, well, you used to do it, so now we're going to do it. And if Democrats get control again, we'll do it back at you. I think it'd be much better for us to have an independent redistricting situation. Campaign finance reform, I've heard, I don't know if you hear it as well, Senator Sawyer, but over and over how people are annoyed how much money matters in politics instead of just the best candidate who helps constituents the most and does the right thing. Instead of that person winning, it's usually the person who can raise the most money and spend the most money, often on negative ads, which I think is bad for democracy. We want to make voting more accessible, easier to vote for all eligible voters, not harder. I don't want to throw out absentee ballots. I had to fight, and I will fight again, a bill that some members of the General Assembly are pushing through that would throw out absentee ballots that are validly voted if they arrive after Election Day, which is frustrating to me because the law has been in North Carolina that as long as it is postmarked by Election Day and you put that absentee ballot in the mail, it will count. I think it should count. I think it's anti-democratic to throw out a ballot that is validly voted by Election Day. So many other things we could talk about here. I will happy to come back and talk about more of this, but I think I should move on because we've got a lot to cover. Women's rights, here's some specifics on what I mean about that. I think we should codify the protections of Roe v. Wade. Those have been the protections that have worked, a reasonable compromise on a divisive subject of abortion my entire adult life. But only recently by what I would call an activist court that's not in touch with most Americans, overturned that decision and radically changed women's ability to control our own body, make decisions about when and whether to be a parent. Forced pregnancy and other things are just not American. They're not appropriate and really undermine women's equality. As someone who has experienced both two births, as I introduced you to my daughters, but also some miscarriages, I know that things happen and pregnancy is complicated and it is not appropriate for politicians to make those decisions for us. Equal pay for equal work, it's an issue we have tried to get addressed for years and years, but we know that there is just deeply seated discrimination that happens in how women are paid that I'd like to address. Workplace pregnancy protections. North Carolina has very few protections for employees. I would love to address them all, but I would hope we could at least address the needs of pregnant workers so that, for example, employers would be required to accommodate with reasonable accommodations people who are pregnant, who may need, for example, to sit or to have a stool at the if they're working and having to stand all day long. Equal Rights Amendment, I support it. We do not have any constitutional protections for women's rights in the U.S. Constitution. Some people don't realize that, but because we haven't been able to pass the ERA, it's not in the Constitution. Domestic violence protections, lots of ways in which we could do better. It relates to that gun law as well that I'll talk about as well that we debated just yesterday. Affordable, accessible healthcare. This visual here is a map of that the town of, oops, I'm sorry, I pushed the button, that the town of Huntersville was able to fund with money that the county, but also former Senator Jeff Tarte helped them get. And I'm grateful for that, showing where the people who have been diagnosed with ocular melanoma in the area spent most of their time. It was an attempt to figure out, try to figure out where the ocular melanoma cases are coming from, what's causing it. It is a medical mystery that is really scary. And I've been so frustrated that we can't get more funding to address this. I'm asking for Senator Sawyer's help to see if we can do that. I would like the funding to go directly to the Duke School of the Environment, the Nichols School of the Environment, because they have done it's the same team of doctors that have done some research up in Senator Sawyer's district on the thyroid cancer cases that are prevalent there. I'd like some experts to look into it because so far we just don't know. We don't even have a good lead on what is causing so many people to come down with this cancer of the eye that is otherwise so rare, but unfortunately common in our area. Expanding Medicaid, so important. I touched on it a little bit. Just recently, ECU in the eastern part of our state announced that they've had to close 5 rural healthcare clinics because they have so many patients who are unable to pay for the medical services and they don't have Medicaid. They would qualify if we expanded Medicaid. Those clinics would have been able to stay open, but yet again, have had to close while we are waiting on the state to do what is right. Again, it's been over a decade. It would not cost state taxpayers a cent to do it. 90% would be covered by the federal taxes that we have already paid, money that is going to other states instead of North Carolina to cover other people's healthcare instead of ours. If we would just expand Medicaid, the hospitals are happy to cover the remaining 10% that would otherwise have fallen upon the state to pay, but hospitals know that this is a win-win for everyone and is willing to pay. We'd also get billions of dollars in federal money, plus some incentives if we did it. So many reasons to expand Medicaid. And again, I hope we can do it. But we have a shockingly high maternal mortality rate in North Carolina, particularly among Black women. It's embarrassingly high. I don't have on here what the other states are, but ours is near the top and is something I would hope that we could address. Again, Medicaid expansion would help with that, because if you don't have health insurance, you're less likely to have a healthy pregnancy. So many things we could do on that. I mentioned how important it is to support our public schools. Before I was working and I was a stay-at-home mom, it was a weekly commitment that I made to be in the classroom and help the teachers. And I saw firsthand how a lack of teacher assistants, large class size and other problems, lack of planning time for our teachers just makes it really, really hard to address each child's needs, meet them where they are, and improve their learning and their outcomes. We have a 20-year plus lawsuit that has been going through the state called Leandro. People in the know about public education are very familiar with that, but just in a nutshell, the courts have ordered the General Assembly to meet the constitutional guaranteed sound and basic education that every North Carolina student has. And we are just not meeting it time and time again, particularly in the poorer areas of our state. But CMS is also a party to that lawsuit now, has needs that are not being met. We have the money in the budget. We're just not spending it. We're keeping it in for rainy day and other things year after year after year while kids are not having their needs met. We need more teacher assistants. We have a massive teacher shortage. Teachers are really getting burned out and sick of being told to wait and wait and wait and not paid a professional wage. So they're leaving. I'm sorry that they're leaving, but I can't say I don't understand it. One of the ways in which we're pushing a lot of teachers out is we're trying to micromanage their work by, instead of treating them as professionals, we are micromanaging their curriculum, telling them that they should whitewash history and not talk about things that make white students uncomfortable. I think that's a huge mistake. We're currently fighting just this year about whether we should ban LGBTQ inclusive materials, books that would talk about how there's lots of different kinds of families. Some have two moms, some have two dads. And I just think those are exactly the kind of books we should include. They're age appropriate. They're made for elementary age students, to make sure everyone feels welcome in the classroom. So I have fought the bill that would ban those things. I don't think we need to, when we're talking about violence in schools, which is a concern, that some want to arm the teachers, and I just absolutely disagree with that, as do most teachers. Environmental protections. Oops.
Senator Marcus, you can
Yep.
kind of, take a couple minutes and
Okay, couple more minutes.
Move
Okay.
on and get into some Q&A.
All right, so we talked a little bit about the environmental stuff I'm working on. This is a screen. Happy to talk more. If you live near the pipeline leak and want to hear directly from me when there's news, let me know. There is an upcoming public hearing on Colonial Pipeline's request to build a wastewater treatment plant on the site. So if you live near there and want information about that, let me know. This is some advocating for this district specifically. You may recognize some of these photos as area. So we talked about some of that. I'll just shout out that Smithville Revitalization Project is important to me. That's a historically African-American neighborhood that is trying very hard to fight gentrification and survive in a tough economic and real estate boom. So I'll just leave it at that, but I'm working with those folks and hope we can help them. Additional priorities, I touched a little bit on the LGBTQ rights. I have a bill I'm very proud of that would ban conversion therapy, which is not therapy. It's actually really negative and bad for kids. And so I think it does a lot of harm and I want to ban it. I'm going to keep trying. Lots more we could do in that space. Specifically, just in this session, we've had some good bills that I've supported, some bad bills that I fought. Happy to talk more about those. The most recent I'll just mention was that pistol purchase permit repeal bill that will, if it becomes law, will make it so that there is zero background check required for private handgun sales. So you see that a lot online. You see that a lot in just in-person sales and also at gun shows. And to me, that is the opposite of what we need to be doing. We've got a gun violence problem, and to say we're just not going to have any background check anymore on those sales, anyone can buy, no questions asked, to me is the opposite of what we need to be doing. There's other problems with the bill too, but at least that part I was hoping we would not pass, but it did pass. These are the kinds of things I work on every day. My availability to constituents and groups, speaking like to groups like this, for example, is something I do often. And the kinds of things I can help you with, we don't have time to go through all of that, but please reach out to me if I can help you with, or if you have opinions about any of this stuff that you want me to know. Looking ahead for what's left, what we're expecting this session, I think we're going to be debating teacher pay again, Medicaid expansion, as was mentioned. I'm a little worried we might try and make changes to HB 951, which was the bipartisan energy bill we passed last session. That'll be really good. It set some very aggressive goals that I think we need. And I'm worried we're going to backtrack on that. Medical marijuana, we just recently debated that in the Senate. We're hoping to get that passed. A lot of testing of the governor's veto power, a bunch of stuff he vetoed last year, that now with the new makeup of the General Assembly, that the majority party is trying again to get those bills through. So we're going to see a lot of those same debates come up again. This is the year of the trail. It is a big statewide initiative to get folks to get out on the trails, enjoy our state trails. I've already visited a couple this year. I hope you will too. Great information online about how to find them, events that are happening all across the state at these links. And this is how you can get in touch with me. So I'll leave this screen up as we wrap up. If you text all cap Senator Marcus to 22828, you'll get on our mailing list. I do a by email newsletter every other Friday that gives updates like the ones I just gave you, let you know what I'm working on. I feel like it's my job to tell you. You may not always agree with me, but I'm at least going to be open and clear about what I stand for and why and how I voted. So if you're interested in getting that newsletter, please sign up. And then this is how you can find me by email, on Facebook, on Twitter. I am on Instagram. That's not listed here, but I'm there as well. And so I hope to hear from you if there's matters that come up that are important to you, especially if you are a constituent. I want to hear from you. And these are just some pictures of us in action in the General Assembly.
All right.
So that's it.
Senator Marcus, thank you. I tell you guys, it's amazing because I don't think a lot of people really recognize that breadth of issues that you have to deal with and the things you have to do your homework on, develop expertise around. And before I give the floor to Senator Sawyer, I just want to say on your one slide where you listed your policy priorities, that's actually an outstanding list. It's good to see the focus. It's again, a lot of things. So
Glad you approve. Thank you.
okay, Senator Sawyer, the floor is yours.
Floor is mine.
It
All
is.
right, well, good. Well, let's talk transportation, but before we want to do that, let's talk about the Senate makeup. Senator Marcus was right. We have 50 senators in North Carolina, and I'm one of 30 that represent the supermajority. So when I talk, I'm going to talk about things that I feel like we are going to get done. This is not about political ideologies. This is not about big ideas. These are about concrete things, forgive the pun, that we actually are going to get done in North Carolina. So let's focus on transportation. You guys realize and know better than anybody how important that is to your daily lives, to your businesses, to your quality of life, and to the bottom line of each and every person, whether you own a business or not, regardless of your color, regardless of your economic the transportation is our lifeblood, and how do we work around it? There's been a lot of talk and conversation. Let me just talk about the big fun stuff in the room. There's been a lot of conversation about that sales tax increase. Quite frankly, it's just politically untenable up there in Raleigh to do any types of gas increases. I've communicated that with Mayor Lyles. I communicated that with, anyone who will listen from Charlotte. I do want to commend Charlotte. They're doing a much better job of reaching out and speaking, talking to me. I think that's a great headway. And it's not just we don't want to raise taxes because Charlotte's rich and the rest of the other state is not. There's other things that go into that consideration. There's other ways to get money for that. I mean, honestly, what about a taxing authority around the corridor that has and will be serviced by these light rail? That makes a lot more sense to me than charging everybody an extra penny on a cup of coffee. Why don't we tax those who are going to be enriched by the project? That makes sense to me. Secondly, it's disingenuous to think that Norfolk Southern is going to give over the red line. We've been told that line for 20 years. Until we have something in concrete that Norfolk Southern will absolutely allow commuter passenger trail or give over that train track, then we have been just spending money on these pie in the sky ideas without any understanding of what really will happen. So let's be honest and open and talk about what really will happen. I was on WBT last night. Got another elephant in the room talking about the toll lane. Guys, I didn't realize this, but that has been in the works since the first time that the North I-77 was tolled, and that permission was and has been scheduled. We're going to talk in just a minute about. I'm sorry. The South 77. Yes, thank you, Doctor. And so that's basically been written, and shame on me for not understanding that. I had been told that it was, still up for debate and looking for revenue sources to how we can do it so that we don't have a tolling authority over that expansion. But unfortunately, it looks like the cards have already been dealt. So how do we deal the best we can with the cards that we've been dealt? Those are my focuses. I'm the Republican that's going to help you in your boardroom, and I'm going to stay out of your bedroom. And that's where our conversation is going to go today. So just some neat facts about our division and how transportation works. This is an overview for some, but for me, it's always interesting to learn. This area is Division 10, right? Jeff Tarte, you know this. So that's Cabarrus, Stanley, Anson, Union, and Mecklenburg County. It is also one of the most heavily funded divisions out of Raleigh. So you always hear, oh my gosh, east of Raleigh gets all the money, Charlotte gets starved for money. But in fact, we're the second highest funded division of all the 14 divisions in North Carolina. And that's because it's it's based on a formula. I was trying to use a bigger word than I can say. Isn't that right? Okay, it worked. But that's basically based on a formula of road lane miles under management, as well as population and the need. And those needs are scientifically determined. So for example, last budget cycle, the 22 expenditures for District 10 was about $109 million. And now these are not new road constructions. These are the things like, I needed my pothole fixed. This bridge has a crack. We need resurfacing. Those are things that go directly to these counties. That's all delivered by the division manager, and that's how we do it. So it's not before, I think Pat McCrory, our Governor Pat McCrory, was in office. It was more political game and feel and who has more power, who can get money here and there. Now these decisions are made by the local level and your local division engineer. So as community and leaders in your community, make sure you know your division engineer and you love him and send him nice little thoughts and prayers, because he is absolutely the person that will help your program more than anybody else. Okay, let's look into one of my first focuses. This is nothing new, so I'll make it quick. Gas tax. It's not picking on EVs at all. I actually enjoy EVs. I think they're cool. I've got one on order if I can ever get that Hummer in. I'm very excited. It's been in that order for a year and a half. So it's not an attack on those. It's just to say that we have a market disruptor in our revenue source. And how do we address the market disruptor? Government narrowly doesn't do a good job with that, right? We're usually behind in regulations, and the old regulations that we have stifle improvement in the future. So how do we, and as a Republican caucus, we really do look at how do we deregulate and allow you as industry leaders to get your permits faster, or get your road paved better, or make sure there is workforce development. And how do we deregulate that? So you will see what's called a dereg bill. It's a kind of a standard bill that comes through. Those are not standard for us though, as business owners. Those are very important. I mean, those are like, how do you break down the barriers with DEQ to get a permit? I mean, let's just talk about that. Right now, the Department of Environmental Quality is withholding a permit for mining of lithium in Gastonia. What is coming? VinFast and Toyota. Who needs lithium, right? So let's be honest, if you are not going to allow to locally mine this product, it's disingenuous to think that those companies are not going to buy it from another country who has worse mining regulations, terrible human rights records, and we don't know what we're doing and supporting. I always think of the blood diamonds, right? We are basically creating a cottage industry offshore and absolutely eliminating the efficiencies in environmental protections when you have to bring those in. So that is going to be a big portion of that. Look at that dereg bill. Senator Newton's pushing that through. There's something that could be very helpful for your businesses. And so always feel free to reach out to me if there's something I can add or make better for you. That's where we're at. Going back to the transportation thing, the gas tax, our idea is to make sure we find funding and spread it across everybody instead of hitting just one industry. So will EV fees payers, drivers pay a little bit more? Probably, but also so will people who do Uber and Lyft. We have a tentative agreement with them that there'll be a pass-through service fee. That fee, just like Georgia, some other folks will split with the municipalities because 75% of all road lane miles traveled by Uber are along the 85 corridor. So these aren't happening in the country, right? This is happening right here. And how do we generate more money for the cities as a whole? Now, a couple other things that I'm working on that is exciting. It's going to be a big lift, but we have got to give municipalities the tools to align growth along with road construction. And right now they're hamstrung, right? Cornelius, Huntersville, and also Mooresville. So not a new idea, but an idea for local municipalities is to basically replicate the advanced construction program that the federal government does to the state. Here it is. We have a 10-year construction plan called the STEP. Let's see, you guys are getting a hotel, are you guys trying to build a new, who's building the new hospital around 2026? Right, Atrium, sorry, forgive me for that. I just know it's more money for the district, so I'm happy. I don't care whose logo it is, right? Yeah, so sorry about that. So Atrium needs that exit to come along 77, but it's not programmed in the STIP right now. That means that's a 10-year program and a 10-year problem that you're going to have. So what can we do to allow the local municipalities to better align that business need with the road construction need? And that is an infusion of cash, but not from the government level. Let's put the private market at play. So what we'll say is if the idea is that if your program is actually scheduled, if that exit is for your competitor is actually scheduled in the STIP, then we'll allow the town of Huntersville, the town of Cornelius to do an advanced construction loan through the private market backed by the full faith and security of the state of North Carolina. That allows them to have cash without raising taxes and to locally administer that project to better align growth along with road construction. I have been Senator Paul Newton from Cabarrus County, Senator Jim Perry from Kinston, and I are putting together that work team. We have communicated with Treasurer Dale Falwell. Dale, if you're listening, you know you're going to love this idea. And so we are working out the hammers now, but we're also working with Councilman Ed Griggs. He's helping me with the private market portion of this. So this is a real common sense solution to give the tools to those who need it most. Right. So those are the things. That STIP project, this STI, that's estimated $8 billion over programmed. What does that mean? That's $8 billion of promises made to North Carolinians that they don't have the money for. That is disingenuous. That is absolutely telling and manipulating people's hopes, fears, dreams, and financial security based on broken promises. The Board of Transportation, led by the governor, got to stop that. We have got to be honest. They did not. So anyways, that's that. I'm sorry, I don't want to get political, but that is very frustrating to me. I always think of my Southern dialect, Meemaw and Pawpaw, who were told that, Highway 150 was going to get widened and this is going to be the amount of money that you can estimate to get for your right-of-way acquisition. And then all of a sudden, everything stops. right? And then Mima and Papa were going to go to Florida, but now they're still in North Carolina on this land because they were made those promises that the Department of Transportation did not follow through on. So that's one of my big reasons about managing and getting more money into the transportation system so that we can honor the commitments that we have. Not only do we need more money in transportation, we need better efficiencies. And I think that speaks to every department in government, especially the education department. Just a quick note, I started as an education advocate and a bond supporter for more schools in Iredell County, which did include a tax increase. But I have learned over time that there's enough money in education. It's just not always spent well. And that's a problem of just bureaucracy and over 100 years of each educational funding idea getting funded in a silo. So we do need to return more local control over the budgetary expenses to the professionals who are on the ground at the local level and to kind of get Raleigh out of it. And I've been encouraging my education advocates to talk about more freedom and not more money because they would get a better option for their return if they spent their time on freedom instead of money. And then lastly, you can look through my committee goals and you can see that my committee appointments, and you can see that directly aligns with what I'm telling you here today. It's commerce, it's insurance, it's economic development, it's transportation, it's helping you in your boardrooms. And that's exactly where I'm here at. So I look forward.
Understand insurance? No.
I know a little bit of insurance. Does anybody really understand insurance? I really, but thank you, Senator Tarte, for letting me go through all that.
All right, appreciate both senators. Since we've got about 10 minutes or so, I'm going to do a little bit of a lightning round for both of you. Let's start with the last comment you made, and I'd be curious for both of you on, and more of an education. You talk about the advanced transportation funding model that would allow private loans. Just curious, that is the carry model we followed years ago, which allowed municipalities, if a project was on the STI, you could go ahead, fund it yourself through municipal taxes, whatever sources. But when the project comes up on the STI, then it's remunerated by the state. The one thing that was in the past, so I want to just put you both on the spot, is there was no guarantee the state would actually have to repay the town's investment. Are you saying that this legislation would require, besides this good faith, require them to actually repay the municipality or that loan?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. This is not a new idea, but it's just a new infusion of cash. And so absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's a
But this is ideas, right? These are legislations. So
Right.
they all works through, but that is my intent.
Medicaid expansion
Mhm.
past the House. And I'd be curious for both of you, just perspectives. We've heard different rumblings on the Senate's position, obviously being a supermajority. Your side and your caucus is going to be able to control that, Senator Sawyer. But I'm curious, Senator Marcus, what your caucus discussions on how to nudge the other side of the aisle, if you guys are going to move this, and what, if any, issues you see that's different from in the House version that you guys are struggling with.
Yeah, you brought up the partisan divide there. We have been in the minority the whole time I've been in the Senate, and so sometimes it feels like we don't have any influence. We can't, it's not really, our bills don't get through. So if it was up to us, we would have voted on Medicaid expansion a decade ago. But it was really interesting to see, of all people, President Pro Tem Phil Berger stand up and speak last session. Senator Sawyer, you were there. And he used all our talking points that we've been using for 10 years about why we need to expand Medicaid. We thought, wow, finally. So maybe it just takes 10 years of us saying things that are common sense and good for North Carolina to finally be heard. So in that way, it was really lovely to see some bipartisanship on the basics of Medicaid expansion. The areas in which there's some disagreement on the Senate side, they're determined to not just expand Medicaid and take all that federal dollars that we should take. I think we should just clean past Medicaid expansion, for the record. But they also, in the Senate side, are really determined to include in that two other pieces of legislation, one known as the SAVE Act, which would give nurses and nurse practitioners expanded ability to do things within what they've been trained to do, to help provide more access to medical services. In other words, you don't always need a physician and the physicians don't have to oversee as much as they do now. It's called the SAVE Act. It's hard to go into all the details quickly, but I support that as well, just for the record. I do think it should be tweaked in a couple of ways. It might be going a little too far, but generally, and a lot of other Democrats support that as well. So I think we could agree on a bipartisan level to some version of the SAVE Act. And then the part that I'd love to hear from the Novant and any Atrium people in the House, but the sticking point is often the certificate of need changes that Senate Republicans really want as part of a deal on Medicaid expansion. They want to link the two. For the record, they don't need to be linked. They're not the same thing. They don't, we could just pass Medicaid expansion and should. And that's where we start to disagree, because I'm listening to Atrium and Novant tell me that if we change these certificate of need rules so quickly and in such a radical way, that it's going to be bad for hospitals and bad for their ability to provide healthcare services to the people of North Carolina. And I know in our area, we are so lucky we have two great healthcare systems here. We don't have an issue with access to healthcare, generally speaking, in Mecklenburg County. And I don't want to mess that up. So I think that answered your question.
Yeah. So just a couple clarifications. One, the Senate did pass Medicaid transformation last session. Senator Berger did do a thoughtful, what some people say, pivot, but he also, if you listen to him over time, it was the same thing he said. We have to get Medicaid transformation finished first, so we could figure out an actual dollar amount before we just willy-nilly open the checkbook and allow for Medicaid expansion, especially when they had concerns about whether the federal match would stay there. So if you think it's like, oh, wow, he just changed his mind, he's using all the same talking points. No, he's said all along that Medicaid transformation, which he was vehemently fought about on a partisan basis, that was the genesis for him to be able to move forward with Medicaid Medicaid expansion. Secondly, and the reason why I don't like healthcare is it's all about professional protectionism. And that's what you hear. I'm sorry, I just be honest with you. It's professional protectionism at its finest, all guised under the thought of patient care. And really, we need to get the logos and put them at the door and get people in the room and figure out what really is going on instead of the money that works behind the scenes. And it's just the most frustrating, ingenuous conversation I've ever had, sitting down and listening to professionals tell me that the patient care is the number one need, when I know and I see their 501c4s and what they drill into money and campaigns. So if we really want to talk about campaign finance reform, maybe we should talk about that. So Medicaid expansion, and the reason why you heard me talk about deregulation, that's what these things are the senator asking for, is to deregulate some of these burdenous and onerous professional protectionism measures in our North Carolina. And so I totally support putting it together. I think it's the only way we're going to get it done. And we have to put everything into the cake, and so that we can all eat at the same time.
Okay, another one, jumping back to transportation. I'm going to bounce ping pong around on you a little bit. Is you mentioned the gas tax. As I recall, not too long ago, we actually legislatively capped the amount the tax can actually be set at. The increase, like at 35.5 cents or something. So it can only go so high. But the other thing is, if we're looking, what are the alternatives with the EVs? You mentioned a service fee. I know one of the things that Oregon done is they levy what they call the heavy levy. So there's a surcharge on 18-wheelers and vehicles based on weight class, trailers and things to offset because of the usage and the extra maintenance. Other things besides just a pure service fee that's being looked at for increasing revenue for transportation? Yeah, so we got absolutely, and thanks for the opportunity to answer that question. Talking about getting everybody at the room and leaving the logos at the door, I did just that with transportation. It's called the NC10 Commission. I mean, we put people who are adversaries in a working group and made them figure it out. And what we figured out is we have a plan in order to diversify the revenue for DOT, and because that's got to be done. One of those things I talked about earlier was the pass-through fees. But another thing is, you're right about the heavy levy. I mean, I just heard that the EV 18-wheelers that we're seeing going to be manufactured in North Carolina are almost twice as heavy. So that means they're only going to be able to carry half the payload. So it's disingenuous to think about these heavier trucks that are going to move half the product. And so now we're going to have twice the congestion.
Like these conversations have to happen. What do we do with that? And EVs are heavier. And what does it mean that that happens? Is that they have harder use on our roads. They also burn through tires more. So we have to figure out how we're going to hold and what are we going to do to recycle those tires for other purposes in the transportation space. Something that I'm really excited and it's going to be a long working process is I feel like the gas tax was a good model. We just need to give it to the electric tax. So at the pump collection, Oklahoma does this already. So if you're at a Tesla fast charge station, the fees collected by the app right there, then sent on to the DOR. Then you can move into the second tier, which is like the slower chargers, and then eventually through modernization at home. And I think that's a really good, fair and easy way to capture the amount of money that people are needing to reinvest into the road system.
Kind of a real quick kind of nit detail. Familiar with the VW settlement funds?
Yes.
Has that been spent and for North Carolina's portion? And if so, or has it been determined where you would like to see it spent?
I don't remember. Sorry. I've read a snippet about it, but if I told you an answer, I'd be making it up.
Because I know, and it's probably 6 or 8 years ago, and it's not a bad, because it's lots of money. It's a big bucket that they would use it to do advanced work on the EVs charging stations throughout the state to balance what people could do and potentially put them in.
Well, yeah, I'm glad you
rest
mentioned that
areas.
because, you know, there's a lot of money that was reallocated through the federal Infrastructure Act. So when I emphasize reallocated. So that was, you know, they said $1 billion to North Carolina. Well, not really. That was already, some of that money was already promised to
Sure.
North Carolina. And then it was told you have to build EV stations. Again, I'm a fan of EVs. I want to see EVs. I'm not anti. There's a Southeastern coalition that is really working, and Duke Energy is part of that, about where do we place these EVs? How do we get them moving? And so I'm really respect their leadership on that. So I hope it comes because there is range fear for the purchase of EVs.
Sure.
I do have that
course.
EV on order, but I don't know that I could drive to Raleigh every week, you know? Yeah.
That's right. Senator Marcus, on your survey and staying kind of in the transportation, I'm going to shift to the transit tax. It's fascinating and it's helpful information to see that, you know, you got 50% of your district or respondents to the survey. Do you know whether the folks that did that, do you have the ability to pull it out by zip codes or geographic areas?
So funny
at
you
all?
asked that. That's exactly what I asked my legislative assistant to do. Tell me where, we know where all the zip codes, we know the zip code of everybody who responded, but we haven't yet done the work to match the responses to that question with their zip code. So you saw my district, it does go down into West Charlotte, and some of the people
Right.
that responded are West Charlotte. The majority of the zip codes were in North Mecklenburg, though, where I'm better known, where I have my networks more, you know, people are more likely to respond from the North Mech area. So that was surprising. I will say on that I may have misheard you, Senator Sawyer, but I don't like the idea of addressing, instead of a 1 cent sales tax that all of Mecklenburg County would pay. That in some ways is bad enough, but I don't like the idea of saying we're just going to tax those that are near the project, i.e. the people who would use it more, because I feel like up here in North Mech, we've already been paying the extra taxes that to have paid for the
Quite a
red
bit.
line. Our fair share of that money is already coming to us. I would be very angry if we have to pay the same tax that everybody else does in the county. And on top of that, we have to pay the tolls for the toll lane that are, I think, way too high because it's owned by a private company that is motivated by their own profits instead of by the state, which would be a better way of doing it. But then third, would also have to pay extra for living near the red line. Oh, no. We do not want to go in that direction. So
It's an opportunity for some collaborative work, but
Yeah. Two quick things. We'll finish here. We'll stay on this topic of the transit tax. We need another hour with both of you, so we're going to have to get you back.
Yeah.
Talking to Mayor Bales yesterday, and I don't know whether the Senate gets involved to this level, but there's discussion of moving away on the red line and maybe all the lines that there no longer would have commuter rail. In other words, we wouldn't use diesel. Why put 1912 technology in place? If there's discussion, how would we introduce either electric and or hydrogen service to the north end and all the way into Iredell, and that potentially even going elevated rather than surface? Yeah, and they think the subterranean digging tunnels is at least the message I got. That's pretty much off the table because it's being proven to be the solutions, the technology to do that that's been presented is not there. Any thought, do you
Well-
guys get involved in that?
I truly believe in local control and what they need to do. So hopefully the transportation planners in Charlotte are kind of hearing my warning.
Yeah,
You know, guys, thank you. I appreciate your work that you're doing, but it's not resonating in Raleigh. So how are you going to approach this topic in a different way? And so I just say that, you know, keep that communication open because I will happily support any kind of improvement in transportation, but not the way that it's happening right now.
all right. And the last thing for clarification for our audience, and either one of it, if you know, you know, for Charlotte, they're looking to put a referendum out on the transit tax. That would go to the voters to let them decide. But is it not true to increase the transit tax because Mecklenburg's already at their cap, that it would require legislative approval to allow them to increase it? And then I guess the question is that even reasonable that Raleigh would allow Charlotte or Mecklenburg to do that right now?
Well, I appreciate you asking Senator Marcus and I that, but I think Speaker Moore already answered that question about a couple months ago,
Which
which was a no.
so
Yeah.
is Charlotte wasting their time?
No, I don't think they're ever wasting their time. Good thoughts around a public's problem and getting public solution is always good. I don't think you should never, that if you don't ask, the answer is always no.
Sure.
Right. So I think it's a great opportunity for growth and development, strengthening our relationship between Charlotte and Raleigh. And I promise to be the bridge between that, but just don't keep doing the same thing over and over again and expect
Sure.
a different result.
Yeah, I did that at home all the time. growing
Yeah.
up.
Yeah. Isn't that a definition of something?
Yeah.
Yeah. Insanity.
All right. Well, senators, we totally appreciate your busy schedules. We know you're in long session and spending inordinate amounts of time. This is not a 8-hour-a-day job. You know, people think it's a part-time legislature, but you guys are working 60, 80-hour weeks. And we thank you for your service
Thank
to the
you.
state, both of you. So thank you for both
Thank you,
being
guys.
here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bill, floor is yours again.
Yeah, and Luke, we want to thank Novant for being the presenting sponsor of our Focus Friday series. So thank you very much for being here today. Thank you for being the presenting sponsor. I want to apologize to everybody in Cyberland. Whatever, for whatever reason, the Zoom wasn't hooking up with our projector here. So you could hear the senator and she could hear us, but unfortunately we couldn't hear. So we'll look into that and may get another speaker. Joe Boss is in the room, who is the Chief Advocacy Officer for the Charlotte Regional Business Alliance, which is no longer a Chamber of Commerce, but still the granddaddy of all of our chambers in the area, and certainly the leading advocacy group, not only in Charlotte Region, but in the state. Just a couple of days ago, the Charlotte Regional Business Alliance brought together 17 area chambers of commerce, all the way from Lancaster, South Carolina, all the way to Statesville, and looking at how we can form a wish list or advocacy points that we can all agree on and collaborate on to take to Raleigh and Columbia for the South Carolina Chambers of Commerce. Jeff, thank you very much for leading this discussion today. Want to remind everybody that this coming Tuesday, we're going to have a lunch and learn. Diversity Lunch and Learn is going to be celebrating Black History Month. And so we're going to have a panel discussion here. And we got 3 African-American leaders who's going to talk about, first off, Miss Ada from Ada Jenkins, and from the Davidson perspective, BJ Caldwell is going to be talking about the Florence Lytle School. We have Ron Potts talking about the Smithfield community, and Ruby Houston is actually going to be the one talking about Miss Ada. So great program. We still have some seats available if you want to join us in person. If you want to join us via Zoom, call the Chamber of Commerce and get those credentials. On Wednesday, we have a nonprofit roundtable where we get together with 30 nonprofits and we talk about some of the things going on with our area nonprofits. And our March 16th is our annual meeting where we're going to be honoring the Business Person of the Year, the Citizen of the Year, Entrepreneur, and several others. So again, thank everybody for joining us and have a great weekend.